Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Very Cold Lasagna podcast. I am your host, DylanLasagna, and this is episode number 219 of this icy yet spicy podcast for all the filthy casual takes on the world of sports. And in this episode, we're here with another edition of the week that was and will be in the 2024 NFL season. This week being week 2 that we're going to be talking about that was and will be, that being week 3. So buckle up, strap in. We have a lot to cover in this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. And this week that was and will be in the 2024 NFL season. But before we get into all that, a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Make sure you're following Very Cold Lasagna on social media, on X and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. Make sure you rate and review the show on whether you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify for all my audio listeners out there of Very Cold Lasagna. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you smash the like button, smash the subscribe button if you're not already, turn on that notification bell so you'll be notified of each and every episode of Very Cold Lasagna, and leave a comment down below with your own takes on each and every episode or video that goes up exclusively on YouTube. And in relation to the topic of this episode, well, it's a recap of week 2, all the games that we're going to be talking about in the podcast, as well as the upcoming slate of games going on in week 3 that we're also going to be talking about much later in this episode. So leave me your takes, leave me your predictions, or leave me some things that I didn't cover here in the podcast for this one. So I want to hear it all in the comment section below if you're watching this on YouTube. And then, of course, the most important thing to do is to make sure to share this with your friends, share this with the stranger, share this with your neighbors, your coworkers, what have you. Share the good, the bad, the ugly, everything about Very Cold Lasagna. So do it all, pal. Do it all. That being said, let's talk about this second week in the National Football League, the 2024 NFL season. And I gotta say, it's only been the second week, and I feel like a lot has happened. A lot more has happened than the first week. The first week, you feel like you're settling in. You're settling in to, you're trying to get your bearings back. You know, it's like the first day on the job or your first day at school. You're trying to get settled into a new environment, or maybe it's you're in high school, like it's your second year and you're trying to get back in the swing of things. It kind of feels like that with the second week of the NFL. You're trying to still get back in the swing of things. So here we are with week 2. Some teams have either won or lost their games, and well, we're trying to figure out either who's the real deal, or well, who's trying to get that first win of the season. And we were certainly going to find out some questions to those answers, or maybe not. But let's talk about it in the week that was portion of this episode. So starting off with Thursday Night Football, only on Amazon Prime Video for the first time this year. Only for that. How much are they charging now? Like, is it like $12.99, $13.99, whatever? Either way, you got to pay up for it, pal. You got to pay that Jeff Bezos money for the first time this year if you haven't already. Anyway, Thursday Night Football, only on Prime Video. It was the Buffalo Bills taking on the Miami Dolphins. Both teams won this last week. The Bills won this matchup 31-10. And the Bills, they pretty much dominated this game on all fronts. Once again, having Miami's number. Gained 3 total touchdowns from running back James Cook. Very productive day from him. Netting 3 total interceptions on Tua Tagovailoa as well, including a pick 6 in the third quarter. But unfortunately, the biggest story of this game, coming out of the week 2 opener overall from the NFL, was the health, once again, of Tua. His health is once again in serious question because he took this nasty hit because he's trying to convert a 4th down, and he already picked up a first down like in the red zone when Miami was in scoring position, but rather than unfortunately slide, he took this I don't know what's the best way to. He bumped himself. He bumped himself into Damar Hamlin, the safety for the Bills. And I hate to say it, it was a cruel fate of irony. For those of you that are unaware of the Damar Hamlin situation a couple of years ago in Cincinnati, it is a little bit of cruel fate for both of them. So, yeah, Tua, he has those clenching of the arms. Is another scary situation for everyone involved. And he fortunately gets up. He's walking, but he's immediately ruled out of the game with the concussion. For those of you not aware, Tua suffered a series of concussions 2 years ago during Miami's 2022 campaign. And the first one happened like 2 years ago, where that was very scary against the Bills in week 3. So a very scary situation. And it happened to hear it again on a Thursday night. So, yeah, Tua, forget how bad Tua was already doing before that. But this is just more important. This was more important for Tua because, I am concerned. I am very concerned about his well-being, his health. I'm no medical expert on concussions or anything, or like the player safety, but I just hope that he's doing okay now. He's just doing okay. I hope he gets the right, he gets the right care, and whatever's next for him, he makes the right decision, whether that's continuing to play or calling it. But the best thing I can hope for is make the right choice that's best for him. So Tua is out for the next couple of games. They did put him on injured reserve. But yeah, that's the least of Miami's worries right now. They did sign a quarterback in Tyler Huntley. But again, the most important thing for the Dolphins is, trying to win as many games as they can for Tua. So hopefully he'll be all right going forward. So yeah, very unfortunate stuff there. So going on to the Sunday slate of games, starting with the early morning portion, we had the Las Vegas Raiders beating the Baltimore Ravens in an upset of sorts. And this began a string of upsets around the NFL. They beat them 26-23, soaring back from a 10-point deficit in the fourth quarter, thanks to a bounce-back day from the whole offense, led by Gardner Minshew. Doing well despite a bad offensive line that allowed 5 sacks. But Minshew overcame that by leading the offense in scoring 20 second half points, with great production coming from rookie tight end Brock Bowers and Devontae Adams, who had probably his best game as a Raider. So overall, when you look at that performance by the Raiders, probably a really good one. That they hope to continue to carry going into these next few games, especially when you have a matchup coming up in your home opener against the Carolina Panthers in front of the Raider Nation. Meanwhile, for the Baltimore Ravens, you really let this slip up? You really blew this game that you should have won? You were up by 10 points on 2 different occasions, yet you couldn't seal the deal? How do you fold like that? And this is not folding like Dominic Mysterio did to Liv Morgan at SummerSlam. No, that's a different kind of fold. No, this is the kind of fold where you choke so hard that the Ravens folded like the LA. They got the LA Clippers disease. Yeah, they got the LA Clippers. Okay, they didn't get the Dominic Mysterio treatment. They got the LA Clippers. They got the LA Clippers, okay? So they got the case of the Clippers. So that was mainly because of the struggling defense that couldn't stop the Raiders offense. And the offensive line had some trouble protecting Lamar Jackson. They had trouble giving him time to throw. And oddly, they abandoned the run. They abandoned the run. They let Lamar Jackson throw, and his throws were kind of wonky. So it was a little interesting. So they better tighten up on that because, for what it's worth, up next is a trip to Dallas. And we'll talk about Dallas in just a bit because they got some interesting stuff of their own. So speaking of those no, sorry. They didn't get the case of the Clippers this week. The LA Chargers took care of their business against the Carolina Panthers. They blew them out 26-3, thanks to Justin Herbert and Quinn Johnson's 2 first half touchdowns early on in the game. And yeah, they pretty much made it easy pickings on those kitties in blue. And let me just say this real brief on the Chargers, because I have some things to say about the Carolina Panthers. Well, I'm hoping to see some more stuff from the Herbert and the passing offense. But I mean, they're doing fine stuff right now, especially when J.K. Dobbins is being that difference maker that helps balance out the overall offense. Dobbins being effective once again with another 100-yard plus rushing game, capped with that somersault touchdown. So right now, it's proving that he's staying healthy, which is good because he's had trouble doing that in Baltimore. So as long as he can stay healthy, I think this Chargers offense is going to do good things under Jim Harbaugh. So actually, speaking of Jim Harbaugh, I'm glad that he's starting out 2-0, and hopefully he'll keep it up going forward. But they got a tough test coming up next week. And then the Carolina Panthers, before the news came out, this game was really rough. And I said to myself, it was time for Dave Canales, the head coach, to take a long and hard look. Not at himself, because, the guy just got there. The guy just got there from Tampa Bay, but at his quarterback, because it didn't seem like his problems were going away no matter who his head coach was, whether it was Frank Reich or it was Canales or him. Yeah, him, pretty much. Because Bryce Young, whatever he did in college, obviously was not translating well into the NFL. Questionable decision-making, weekly turnovers again. It put the Panthers to sleep very early. And, well, here we are now. They benched Bryce Young, the number 1 overall pick from last year, just 2 games in, and they switched him over from him to Andy Dalton. Very rough stuff. It's very disappointing to see. And if it's like this the rest of the season, I mean, is it well worth wondering if Bryce Young is the biggest bust in NFL history? I don't know. Maybe I'm too young to remember. So meanwhile, we had the Seattle Seahawks beating the New England Patriots 23-20 in an overtime nail biter. They pulled through that meat grinder as Jason Myers notched the game-winning field goal in the extra period. And for the Seahawks, man, their offensive line again having their way against their quarterback, because this was a group that was invested so much in the offseason, but it's reaping their rewards in the wrong way so far. Geno Smith has been hit or sacked on several occasions, and week 2 was no different. Remember last week that the offensive line gave up 2 safeties. They fortunately didn't this past week, but Geno Smith is still getting hit a lot, and it's keeping the opposition in games. So if they want to keep up with the likes of Arizona or the 49ers, hell, even the Rams once they get healthy, they have to demand more. Geno Smith needs to demand more from his offensive line. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Meanwhile, for the Patriots, yeah, they lost this close game, but some people are saying, it's time to put Drake May in there. But it's not like Jacoby Brissett is terrible. And sure, he has his limitations as a backup quarterback that's in the starting position until Drake May is ready. But just like, when you think about it, is it really worth putting in Drake May like right now? Come on, like, let's be real here. It's not like the rest. Look at the rest of the offense. There really isn't much there. Like I said in my season preview for this team, there really isn't much like weapons on this team other than Kendrick Bourne at most. So, That's just my opinion. That's just my filthy casual assessment of it. So, unless you really want to, you could put him against the earliest you could put Drake May in there if he's ready to go is that Week 5 matchup against the Miami Dolphins. Probably at most, but these next couple of games aren't going to be easy. You know, you got the Jets, you got the Niners, and then after that Dolphins game, you have the Texans, and then you have the Jaguars in London. Where exactly do you want to put Drake May in there? I mean, it's a rebuilding year for New England anyway. It's like, do you really want to put Drake May in there? Like this early in the season? Just saying. And then we had this interesting game, like in the early morning slate. The New Orleans Saints going down to the Big D, and they made it big easy rather than big hard. The New Orleans Saints put the ow in the Alice Owboys, courtesy of Alvin Kamara's 4 touchdowns and a second straight efficient game from Derek Carr, 44-19, a total ass whooping of the Cowboys. And are we seeing things right? Like, are we? Is Derek Carr and the Saints not mid anymore? Like, no more big mid in the big hard? Like, no more big hard? Like, are we like seeing things right here? Like, okay, like just like 2 games in, like the Saints have been a very efficient scoring offense. Like Carr taking big chances, slinging it downfield, like deep downfield, like the offense flowing a lot better under new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak. Like I give them a lot of credit. I'll give them a lot of credit. I mean, they face a bigger test next week. Let's see how they do against that particular team that flies. But for now, they're certainly flying with passing colors. So we'll see how they'll do. But for now, they certainly passed their first 2 tests. If they can pass the one next week at home against the Midnight Green squad that we're going to talk about, I think the Saints could be certainly something this season. And yeah, I will certainly shut up about the mid jokes on the New Orleans Saints by then. So for the Dallas Cowboys, it's like, what the hell happened here? Like, what the hell happened? Like their run defense, like gave up all that shit to Alvin Kamara, which was a familiar sight from back in January to Aaron Jones and the Packers. And then their front 4, in contrast to what happened last week against Deshaun Watson, the skid marks, they couldn't even get close to Derek Carr, like at all. And the defense as a whole allowed 6 straight scoring drives. Like it didn't take until the 4th quarter for the Cowboys to punt. Like, wow. Like, yeah, last week's performance was certainly a scam. And Dak Prescott, yeah, he certainly wasn't to blame for this one, but I mean, it's not like he helped either, but this one was more so on that, oh, so scary Dallas defense. So meanwhile, down in the Motown, the Tampa Bay Bucks, they went back and forth with the Detroit Lions, and they put out a statement. They pulled out a survival statement on the Detroit Lions. They beat them 20-16, avenging that divisional playoff loss, despite Baker Mayfield taking a 5-sack ass whooping from Aiden Hutchinson. But in the end, the Bucks got the win. And yeah, Baker Mayfield still finding ways to be effective in this game, whether it was key passes or using his legs to get first downs. And right now, as it seems, Baker living up to that contract right now, even if it wasn't the cleanest of games. I feel like he's been doing a good job so far. And right now, against a playoff contender in Detroit, the Bucks finding ways to win. Even if they gave up a crap ton of yards of defense, Baker taking a ton of sacks, and not playing their cleanest game. This was a statement win for them that really set the tone potentially, like very early, that they're here to stay. They are here to stay in the NFC and, keep up with the New Orleans Saints in what could be a very tight battle for the division, surprisingly. And meanwhile, for the Lions, there's not really much shame in losing this game. They pretty much did everything imaginable on both sides of the ball. There were a couple of missed opportunities to win this one, but it just wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough. Tampa just found more ways than them to stop them in key down situations. But yeah, a little bit unfortunate. They do face a tough first road test next week. And we'll talk about that when we talk about them going to the desert. But for now, not really much to panic for Detroit unless they start having really bad performances. Then we had the Green Bay Packers taking care of the Indianapolis Colts 16-10. That's despite not having Jordan Love. He was out for the game with an MCL sprain that he suffered in Brazil. And they did that with a heavy dose of Josh Jacobs and their rookie kicker, Braden Narvinson. That's pretty much enough to take care of the job and squeak by Indianapolis. And man, I feel like, Indianapolis has been taking a lot of hits with these injuries, and which is a bummer, especially when they lost edge rusher DeForest Buckner. He was put on IR recently with the ankle sprain, with the ankle injury, I believe, which sucks. He was a key anchor to that pass rush, and now that he's not there, it's going to be harder for them to get to the quarterback and especially stop the run, which has been a problem for them these first two games of the year. So that's going to put a lot more pressure on Anthony Richardson in the offense to not just play catch up with the opposition, but also just score points in general, and just advance the ball. So if Richardson can't deliver his end either, then the Colts are going to have some serious problems these next couple of games as their defense starts to just heals up in general. And then for the Packers, they're just finding ways to win, and they're doing it with an interesting formula. Trying to cover up Malik Willis's weaknesses by utilizing the play action, utilizing heavy doses of Josh Jacobs. It'll be a little bit tougher to mask that when they face stronger defenses, but for now, this was fine. This was a win. A win is a win, and it'll fly for them. So it'll be interesting how that works out next week. But for now, they got the win. And then we had the Cleveland Browns going to the land of all elite to grind out a win over the Jacksonville Jaguars in Trevor Banks Stadium. Why the heck did you do that? Why the hell did Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars do that when they lost? And again, it was for donation purposes, but still lost. Okay? But anyway, the Browns jumped out to a 13-3 halftime lead off the leg of Dustin Hopkins before they weathered the fog of a late comeback from Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars, and they won that game. But slightly better week from Deshaun Watson. And Kevin Stefanski just has to hope and pray that Watson can hopefully try to get better and be at least turnover free as the weeks go on and on throughout the year. Meanwhile, for Jacksonville, what happened here? What happened? It's they gave up the lead last week against Miami, and then they tried to rally back, but there's one key thing that kept them from doing so. The offensive line. The offensive line that either is injured or underperforming. And Trevor Bankfield saw their quarterback get sacked, hit, running for his life, what have you. It pretty much caused the team to fall behind at a snail's pace. It's pretty much a snail's pace all game. And it even caused a safety in the last 2 minutes, something that they really need to have happen. So, they lost this game mainly because, the offense couldn't really produce. One of those key factors was that offensive line, And if that offensive line can't protect their quarterback, then, it's going to be a recipe for disaster against even tougher teams. So then we had the Minnesota Vikings getting an upset. I think it's another one. No, this is their first upset of the year over my San Francisco 49ers because of their defense making life hell for Brock Purdy and that 49ers offensive line for most of the game. And then they managed to hold off a late comeback from San Francisco, beating them 23-17. And I talked about this in my 49ers specific game recap. Like, the Niners really lost this game. Like, they really did bad, like, on all accounts, whether it was the offensive line, Brock Purdy, like, he didn't have a good game. Kyle Shanahan, like, he made some questionable coaching decisions. The defense gave up one too many big plays, especially the 97-yard touchdown to Justin Jefferson after the questionable fourth down decision by Kyle on offense. So, yeah, they just shot themselves in the foot one too many times. And now they have a couple of injuries to note of. So, the Niners, I don't know. Hopefully they'll bounce back next week, but something to monitor. Meanwhile, for the Minnesota Vikings, they got themselves an early legit win. I was kind of questioning them like last week because they won in a blowout against the Giants, but again, it was the Giants. But this week they played well. I'll give them credit for that. They played well with that defense harassing Brock Purdy and limiting the Niners offense overall. Sam Darnold offensively made enough good plays, including that big touchdown. And maybe perhaps if they could find a way to upset the Texans next week, or just put up a good fight against them, perhaps Minnesota could be in it to win it so far in the NFC North. But we'll see. It's still very early on in the season. Then we had the New York Jets taking on the Tennessee Titans in another back and forth battle. But the Jets managed to hold on in the end with running backs Breece Hall and Braden Allen steering the Jets in a nail biter. So, speaking of those two running backs, I feel like the Jets should really lean in on that as Aaron Rodgers tries to get saddled back in the passing game. The Jets should utilize both of them in both the rushing and receiving game. Both scored receiving touchdowns, and they were highly efficient in the rushing attack too. So, they should play a pivotal role in the offense going forward as Aaron Rodgers continues to settle back into the offense. He's only played two full games since returning to the Jets. So I feel like utilizing the running game more between both of them will be effective. Meanwhile, for the Tennessee Titans, I feel, looking at Will Levis starting 2 games in, he's very careless. He's very careless with the football. But he's had a solid showing in the air, but his glaring mistakes are killing the momentum of his team. Like an unnecessary red zone sack near the end of the game, fumbling the ball where there was nobody near him. And yeah, just too many mistakes are in unnecessary, very unnecessary. And he's just got to take care of the ball if he wants to give his team chances to win games. I feel like he's putting too much on himself to make something happen when something is not there. So I feel like they got to do something to make him relax. Those Aaron Rodgers, 5-letter word, RELAX, relax. So then we had the Washington Commanders beat the New York Giants on 7 field goals, including the game winner from Austin Seibert. He went perfect on all 7 of them. And the Giants, they had opportunities to win this game, but they didn't, even though they had a much better performance from their big blue offense. Turnover-free game from Daniel Jones, but there were still times where they were very inconsistent. Meanwhile, for Jane Daniels and his offense, I feel like, he's still finding his way. He's still showing flashes as a passer, but I feel like he still relies heavily on his rushing ability. So, coordinator Cliff Kingsbury should keep the ball rolling with his other strengths. Like I said, his rushing ability, and then utilizing the rushing attack more with Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler. So eventually, Jaden Daniels will have his way in the passing game. It's just not quite there yet. But they did manage to eke out a win, but they do face a tall task in the bright lights next week. Going to the afternoon slate of games, the Arizona Cardinals put the absolute hurt on their division rival LA Rams thanks to Kyler Murray in the offense, scorching them with a 40-point scoring barrage. Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison scoring 2 of those touchdowns, 41-10. Oof, oof, oof. Especially for the LA Rams, the injuries just keep mounting up. Injury mania. What you gonna do, brother, when all those injuries run wild on you? Los Angeles. So, Matthew Stafford was missing half of his starting offensive line. He was sacked 6 times. He missed Puka. He was dearly missing Puka Nacua, and now he's sorely missing Cooper Kupp. He lost in mid-game to, I believe it was an ankle injury, as well, and now he's going on IR. Ugh, man, that Rams passing attack is going to be severely downgraded, and then the defense also missed a couple of key starters to injury as well in that game, and going forward too. So all in all, this is a really bad division loss that could hurt more if they can't overcome those injuries next week going to their home opener, or can you even call it a home opener when a certain team has the majority of its fans coming over. Meanwhile, for the Cardinals offense, oh man, last week against the Bills, it was a little bit of an appetizer, but this week it was like the somewhat main course because they look scary. Kyler Murray looked a lot more comfortable this week, and it showed. Getting his top man, Marvin Harrison, back involved with the offense. He scored his first 2 touchdowns. He had a 100-yard scoring day, and he also got the likes of Trey McBride, James Conner, Michael Wilson involved. So he shared the wealth. Like the whole Cardinals offense shared and cared of being a depleted Rams team, and going into a big week 3 matchup against the Detroit Lions. This could be a scary Cardinals team that could light up Detroit if Detroit's not careful. Then now looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers, they went to the Mile High and made life difficult for the rookie Bo Nix. And while they didn't do a lot offensively, they did just enough to squeak by to win 13-6. And again, like I said last week, that defense carrying the team to victory. That TJ Watt led defense swarming Bo Nix relentlessly while forcing him into 2 unkind interceptions that kept Denver scoreless until the 4th quarter. And then Justin Fields doing just enough to give his team any scoring chance possible, minimizing his mistakes. So, yeah, that's the story of the Pittsburgh Steelers so far. Meanwhile, for Sean Payne and his Denver Broncos, I feel like, when are you going to take the train wheels off of Bo Nix? Because it's been 2 games, and Bo Nix looks really uncomfortable and unthreatening with whatever things that his coach is giving him. And I don't know what we're doing here. I feel like these next couple of games, like, we got to see Sean Payne, like, give Bo Nix, take off the training wheels, like, bit by bit, and see what he can do, especially downfield. Like, because right now, what you're giving him in the short passing game, like, defenses, like, don't feel, like, scared. They don't feel scared of him. They can, like, easily pick him off or just, like, sack his ass. Like, nothing. Like, you got to give something, Sean Payne. Then we had the Kansas City Chiefs in a nail-biter against the Cincinnati Bengals in a rematch of a rematch of a rematch. But anyway, Mahomes didn't have his best day. He got picked off twice, but he managed to, for how controversial or not you want to think about it, he got his team back in the swing of things. Got his kicker, Harrison Butker, in range to save the day. And again, then some. With the last second game-winning field goal to overcome the Cincinnati Bengals 26-25. But regardless of how you thought about that ending for the Bengals, they still committed some self-inflicted mistakes to cost themselves the game. Like, when you look at it, the Bengals looked really good after last week's dud against New England, and they were well on their way to beating the Chiefs. But they ruined their chances this week again with some bad penalties, and especially the one with Jamar Chase, complaining about a face mask and all that, and then the pass interference that put Kansas City in field goal range. The one that everyone was talking about on Sunday. But regardless of how you felt about that, they can't be making dumb decisions that put them in losing spots. They're 0-2 again. And, well, they better find a way to get themselves to 1-2, because otherwise you're going to be in real trouble. So then you have the Chiefs. Whatever you want to feel about them, they're 2-0. They survived an early home gauntlet, like, by the thick of their skin. But now they head out to their first 2 road games of the year against the Falcons and the LA Chargers. Ooh, some people think, this will be easy breezy, lemon squeezy. But we'll see what happens. Anything can happen in the NFL. But who knows? Who knows? We'll find out which one of these teams that they're going to be facing next can realistically give them a true test before they head into their Week 6 bye. So the Chiefs, again, as a 2-time defending champion, we'll see which team can give them a run for their money. Especially with these first 2 road games of the year for them. So then we had the Sunday Night Football game of this week with the Houston Texans just barely overcoming the Chicago Bears in this defensive affair that everyone thought was going to be an offensive one between the quarterbacks Caleb Williams and CJ Stroud. But no, it ended up being a defensive battle that went down to the wire, which saw the Houston Texans stand tall over Caleb Williams in Chicago 19-13. So speaking of Caleb Williams, he really struggled in this one. But, I mean, he's a rookie. Maybe a little bit overconfident rookie. Probably. So this is, especially considering, he had a first week where he won despite a 50-50 game. He didn't really do all that much. But this week, that kind of showed where he really struggled for much of it. But even if, most of it had to do with this offensive line. The Texans blitzed them a good amount, and either he couldn't take the heat or he threw some bad interceptions. So, that's pretty much the story of this one for Caleb. But then it's still early for him, and while he has to adjust, it's just a reminder that, it's early, and it's on to the next one for him. And it's also a reminder, if you're the Houston Texans, that CJ Stroud has so many riches on this offense now. Just look at it. Just because they signed Stephon Diggs, that doesn't mean, the current supporting cast before him, before they signed him, it's not going to take a hit. It's like CJ Stroud was already, and his offense were already, good. Like, just look at Nico Collins. He had a 100-yard scoring game. Diggs, like I said, Diggs was even the leading man in that win. And then look at Tank Dell. Tank Dell is still there. They're still trying to. They just got Joe Mixon in there as well. So they have all these pieces. They have all these pieces in there to spread the wealth, share the load, and they're only just getting started in Houston. Then we had the Monday night game in Philadelphia as the Falcons pulled off the upset of the week over the Eagles in a nail biter, which not many thought was going to happen in the last 2 minutes of the game, because all the Eagles had to do was get a first down deep in Falcons territory. But one questionable decision changed everything, and Kirk Cousins and company made them pay for it with a clutch touchdown drive And one interception later from the defense, they sealed the deal 22-21. And man, like that was a good way to end week 2. But for the Falcons, that was a good resounding win for them. Despite an offense it's still kind of limited until Kirk Cousins fully works his way back. But I feel like he played much better this week, moving around a lot more. But an overall good win for them. Speaking of the opposite of that, though, the Philadelphia Eagles. There's a theme for them last year, like late in the year. They shot themselves in the foot again, especially with that decision to go for it, throw it on a short third down, 3rd and 3 in the red zone. You had Saquon Barkley, who had been scorching Atlanta's run defense, all night. Why didn't you use him, in a running situation? Why did you have him? Why did you have Jalen Hurts throw it to him on the side on a third down? What are you doing? You had him right dead in the rights. As a runner, it could have ended the game there. But no, Nick Sirianni is too big-headed, as big as JD McDonald's dumbass on Raw. I don't know. So they made him pay. The Falcons made him pay against that supposedly improved defense under Vic Fangio, which was also a boiling issue that exploded on Monday night. So, yeah, they're going to have to come together on a short week to address these problems in preparation for 2 tough outings on the road. So, yeah, that was the week that was. Week 2 in the NFL season in 2024. And let me know your thoughts, your big takeaways, who made the biggest statement in this past week, who is the biggest losers from week 2. Let me know in the comments below on YouTube, or send me a DM on social media, on Twitter or Instagram, as we now look ahead to the week that will be week 3 of this season. So that starts off with Thursday Night Football, only on Amazon Prime Video for that $15, pal, or however much it is now, as the Patriots at 1-1 take on the also 1-1 New York Jets. And for these game slate, I'm not going to try to do picks on them because it's not worth it for me. I'm terrible at these picks, so forgive me. So for both of these teams, of course, it's a division rivalry. Both of these teams are in need of a win. And for the Patriots, it's the start of a tough 2-game stretch for them. For Jared Mayo's rebuilding squad, who knows? Maybe at some point, if Jacoby Brissett does bad, maybe this is the trigger. This is the trigger for Jared Mayo to put in Drake May against a tough Jets team. Speaking of the Jets, this will be the first game for Aaron Rodgers at home since that dreaded Monday night opener against the Bills. Jets fans, you better you have to hope and pray that Aaron Rodgers does not get hurt. I mean, I'm praying too that his ass does not get hurt. Swear to God. Please. Football gods, do not let this man get hurt. I'm actually begging for once. So then we move on to the Sunday morning slate first, as the 0-2 New York Giants take on the 1-1 Cleveland Browns in a battle of, basically good or bad quarterback play from either team. That's basically all it is. Daniel Jones or Deshaun Watson. Which quarterback can play better or worse? That's basically all it is. So then we move on to the Chicago Bears at 1-1, taking on the 0-2 Indianapolis Colts, desperate for a win if they want to get back into this AFC South hunt. And hopefully we see more out of Anthony Richardson, because, I get it. He's playing catch up in trying to get as many live reps as possible after missing most of last year. And for Caleb Williams, another game where he has to bounce back after losing and struggling in that Sunday night game. And interestingly enough, this is a battle between 2 top 5 quarterbacks from the last 2 years. So should be a sleeper game, kind of a sleeper game, as long as things go right for both teams in Indy. So then we had the Houston Texans and taking on the Minnesota Vikings, two 2-0 teams going at one another, seeing which one is legit. Down in Minneapolis, this early morning matchup. So both of these teams seeking their first 3-0 start for the first time in quite some time. And the Vikings, though, they're underdogs in this one. Let's see if Sam Darnold is a real deal against a team that is primed for a playoff spot and maybe even a deeper playoff appearance. As they look to take on a sizable lead in the division. So then in the Superdome, not the Silverdome, brother, the Philadelphia Eagles at 1-1 take on the 2-0 New Orleans Saints, as another test awaits the red-hot New Orleans Saints when they face an Eagles team that, well, not only can match their production at varying points, but they're in desperate need to bounce back after blowing a very late lead to the Atlanta Falcons on Monday night. So they're looking to bounce back. But for the Saints, this is a big test for them. Sure, the Eagles defense is really consistent right now, but when they turn it on, they can turn it on. So if the Saints really want to make a statement that we are legit, we can compete with the Bucs in the NFC South, then this is a game that they need to have against a recent NFC champion in Philadelphia. So they got to have it here. Then we had the LA Chargers and the Pittsburgh Steelers, both at 2-0, facing off against each other. And it's basically a test of which team's early start is proven either legit or fraudulent. And I'm looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. They plan on starting Justin Fields again. This is a big spot for him to really at least try to, try to get something productive, try to do something positive, in this game. That's really worth something to try to hold off Russell Wilson. And I know that's not saying much, but try to do something against Jim Harbaugh's Chargers. Then we had the 0-2 Denver Broncos taking on the 2-0 Tampa Bay Bucks. And like I said, like I talked about in my recap of Denver from week 2, hopefully Sean Payne takes some of the training wheels off of Bo Nix and tries to challenge Tampa Bay's secondary. Meanwhile, for the Tampa Bay Bucks, they're looking for their first 3-0 start in quite some time. And of course, every game matters for Tampa Bay as they try to keep pace with the Saints in the NFC South race very early in the season. Meanwhile, for the Green Bay Packers, at 1-1, they travel to Tennessee to take on the Tennessee Titans. A little bit of an interesting quarterback matchup here because the backups, the backup quarterbacks from last year, they face off against each other. Malik Willis returning to face his old team. At least from what I'm hearing right now, it's Malik Willis and not Jordan Love starting at the time I'm recording this. But Malik Willis is returning to Tennessee to face his old team in Tennessee. And yeah, he's going to be facing Will Levis. But Will Levis is going to be facing that tough Packers defense as the Titans are going to be seeking that first win. But hopefully with Will Levis, he takes better care of that football. Going to the late afternoon portion of games, we have the 0-2 Carolina Panthers taking on the Las Vegas Raiders at 1-1 in their home opener of that big Roomba, that big vacuum that is Allegiant Stadium, the Death Store, pal. As the Panthers debuted their new starting quarterback, Andy Dalton. Yeah, Andy Dalton of the Bengals previously. So there's a new quarterback in town. Andy Dalton, he had a little bit of some success, but not much success last time he started. But no more Bryce Young for the time being. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Then we have the Raiders on the other side. They're looking for their second straight offensive showing, as they welcome their fans back into their stadium for the first time this year. Then we have the Miami Dolphins at 1-1, taking on the 2-0 Seattle Seahawks. And, well, with Tua going on IR, and let's just see how it goes with now that they signed Tyler Huntley, formerly of the Baltimore Ravens. So hopefully things will will hopefully sort of pan out for them, but they got to contend with the Seattle Seahawks and Geno Smith. Like I said about their offensive line, they got to step up. They got to protect their quarterback, especially against a defense, that's trying to keep its team alive, but you got to do something. Then we got going to be a back and forth battle, a potential shootout, or maybe a defensive battle too. The Detroit Lions and Arizona Cardinals going at each other in the desert, both at 1-1. As that Lions defense, actually both defenses facing tall tasks against each other, against each other's offenses. But Kyler Murray and their offense, though, they're very red hot coming off that blowout game against the Rams last week. So this is another one of those games where it's not televised everywhere, but it's something to really keep your eyes worth on, especially if you're a division rival of Detroit and a division rival of Arizona. So something to keep an eye on. Then we have America's Game of the Week. For most people around the United States, the Baltimore Ravens at 0-2 take on the 1-1 Dallas Cowboys. Both teams desperately need a win, but not more so desperate than the Baltimore Ravens because they're 0-2. They really need this win. They lost their kickoff game against the Chiefs by a foot, and then they blew a 10-point lead against the Las Vegas Raiders in a game that they really should have had. So they're facing a Cowboys team in need of a bounce back after an embarrassing blowout home opener against the Saints, where they could have at least kept it close, but no, they went a step further and repeated their Packers embarrassment in the playoffs. So they're going to be looking to bounce back in this one. So yeah, we'll see which one folds. And I'm not talking about that kind of fold. So then we have my San Francisco 49ers at 1-1 taking on the 0-2 LA Rams. Both teams are beat up going into this one. Another one of those injury bowls, as you like to call it. But not more beat up than the LA Rams. But let's talk about my 49ers first, because Brock Purdy is set for a big test ahead these next couple of games. He doesn't have Dr. Christian McCaffrey, CMC, because he's on IR. And then Deebo Samuel recently announced that he has a calf strain, but he also said that he's only be out for like 1 to 2 weeks. Hopefully that stays the case, but hopefully he doesn't come back and then reveal that he came back too quick. But either way, these next couple of weeks are going to be kind of a big test for Purdy as he doesn't have his major weapons. So Ayuk, step up. Jacob Crowning, step up. Jordan Mason, well, he's already stepping up. So everyone else needs to step up. As what is Solo Sikoa step up. Just like Jacob Fatu, step up. And he's like, Solo, I love you. Pretty much that kind of deal. You got to step up. You're saying, I love you kind of deal. That kind of deal. So, meanwhile, for the Rams, you also, you got to look to play much better. I know they're dealing with injury mania, running wild in Los Angeles. And you also are coming off a blowout loss, a big one to the Arizona Cardinals. But, you're trying to get that first win. You still have Matthew Stafford at quarterback. And I know you don't have much at receiver right now. But they're still trying to find a way to get a win. Try to find a way to get a win. Then we have the Sunday Night Football game for this week. The Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Atlanta Falcons. The Chiefs' first road game of the year after 2 consecutive home games to start off. The Chiefs, they don't really have a lot of worries right now, other than a few key injuries like Isaiah Pacheco going on IR. They lost him for a couple weeks with I think it was a knee injury or shoulder injury, and he had to get surgery on it. But either way, they lost him for 6 weeks. They recently resigned Kareem Hunt from their glory days back in 2018 in Mahomes' first full year of starting. So, yeah, at least they had some insurance policy there. So, yeah, that rushing attack for now is going to be at least tested. Meanwhile, for Kirk Cousins and the Falcons, they're hoping to follow up that upset of the Eagles by getting another test in hand that being the Chiefs, in this primetime matchup. Then we have a Monday Night Football doubleheader that's likely going to whoop that ass, whoop that trick on Monday Night Raw, probably even further. And that one of those matchups being the all-elite Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the 2-0 Buffalo Bills. But Jacksonville, man, they're in major need of an upset. They need a win after 2 close losses. They can't afford to go 0-3. If they do, then they're going to have a hard time trying to catch up with the Texans, barring some major collapse from them. So the Jaguars really need to find a way to get this W against a Bills team that is red hot right now. Despite losing Stephon Diggs in the offseason and releasing a bunch of guys, the Bills are looking to make another primetime statement after dominating Miami on Thursday night last week. Then the second primetime game on Monday night that we have is the Washington Commanders at 1-1 taking on the Cincinnati Bengals at 0-2, who are also desperate for a win on Monday night. So the Bengals, if they somehow don't get this one against Washington, they're in big trouble. But for Jay Daniels, as the Commanders are rebuilding, this is a good opportunity. This is a good opportunity for Daniels to get some looks. Get some looks at pretty much everyone around the world to see what he can do on national television. I know he got it in the preseason, but this is the regular season now. So, should be an interesting week 3. Week 2 was full of stunners, upset, close ones. And, man, we're just getting started here. Hopefully week 3 serves a nice follow-up as we get closer and closer to the end of the month. I mean, we're only like midway through the month, but every week goes by pretty fast. So let me know your predictions, your picks for the week that will be week 3 of the 2024 NFL season. And like I said before, let me know your takeaways from week 2 of the 2024 NFL season. So anyway, that is going to do it for this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. I'm your filthy casual host, DylanLasagna, and this is another edition of the week that was and will be in the NFL, week 2 edition on Very Cold Lasagna. So thank you for tuning in to episode number 219 of this icy yet spicy podcast. And until the next one, keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge with your takes on the world of sports. And until I see you, when I see you, peace out.